me, a little bit about healthcare, and then a little bit about what it takes to kind of start something up. So a very quick introduction to Pivot. Pivot Digital Health, we launched in January this year, a product out of COVID, built over a cup of coffee with someone I did know and someone I didn't know. And now we are fully functioning. We have a small team, but we've won a very large piece of global work where we'll probably be working over 25 different countries around the globe for a biotech company, helping to shape their digital strategy and technological infrastructure for the next 3 years. So we've gone from 3 of us having a coffee in December to running around trying to find space for us all to come and work together now. So incredibly exciting. But where did it all start? So of course, 2 of my images haven't now come through. So I went to Leicester University. I studied history and politics for no other reason than I loved history. I left there and went on an expedition to Chile with Rally International for 5 months. Best thing I ever did. And then I came back and got the first job I could get in London. That's it. £8,000 a year selling advertising in the back of Autocar magazine. Realized I was pretty good at selling, but then stumbled across a job along Richmond High Street working for a healthcare media planning and buying business. And from there, my career has stayed in healthcare. It developed into digital marketing, just had a feel for it, just fancied doing something innovative right at the beginning. And we're talking a long time ago now, 26 years ago. So when digital was at its most basic format. But I stayed in healthcare. And when I say healthcare, really working in pharmaceuticals. Every pill that you've ever been prescribed by a doctor has a huge amount of marketing and commercialization behind it to get that doctor to give you that pill for that remedy, for that diagnosis. And probably one of the businesses I've worked for have been responsible for you taking that pill. I then went to work in consumer land. I went to work for a television company in London, where we worked with NHS Digital when interactive television was no more than the amount of bandwidth it took for the red button on your remote control to bring you CFAX, or if any of you have ever used it, so the basic text search facility that your TV used to offer you. We worked with NHS Digital then to bring you in-person healthcare into your home. That was radical at the time. It was £5 million to test it on 30,000 people in Birmingham. We rolled it out, but then the NHS said it was too expensive. So that was put on the back burner. And now today with telemedicine, it was one of the forerunners of telemedicine. From there, I went to work. I actually then bought the first business that I worked for, and that was the pharmaceutical healthcare media planning and buying business. So that gave me a much better insight into running my own business, running finance, digitizing what was a purely paper-based business. We became the largest media agency in the UK for pharmaceuticals. So what was that? That was probably about £13 million with about 9 of us turnover. But the trouble is with me and my profile, I get bored very quickly. So I then I sold that, went to Publicis, wanted to be a bigger fish in a bigger pond, and ran their digital. And then I moved to Inventive, which was 26,000 person business in healthcare, and ran their European digital division, and then started to run all their creative and communications businesses before I then moved to McCann and was the president in Europe for McCann. COVID hit, redundancies were made. So I was chucked out on my ear with a number of other kind of senior management teams, and that gave me the opportunity to have a look around. What these slides are or are not showing you is that I live in Oxford. I love running. I've got a great family to support me. There you go. I've got ahead of myself now in terms of my mural. So these are all of the where I was and how I started. And ultimately, the one thing that I've learned through all of this is that I love selling. I love pitching. I love new ideas. I get bored quite quickly. So, when you work for somebody that wants you to follow a traditional career path through a big business, my friends are saying to me, why on earth have you not just stayed where you are? I have a friend who's now working at Morgan Stanley for 25 years, same floor, same desk, and that's fine for some people, but that's not my cup of tea. So this is an opportunity in my career now to start a business. COVID, the pandemic, has meant that digital marketing in healthcare has been exponentially changed. There's an opportunity like I have never seen in my career so far for both my customers to understand its importance. Before, pharmaceuticals is very human-based, very sales rep-based. Now it's all online. Doctors have had to change the way that they interact with patients. Patients have had to change the way they interact because they're just not allowed into hospitals. So massive industrial behavior change opens up opportunity if you know how to grab hold of it and if you are willing to take a risk. We'll come back onto that in a bit. Now you see it's gone out of sync. Right, Ryan asked me to talk about some health myths, but I'm not quite sure he meant about these kind of health myths. By the way, none of these are true. But I was going to talk to you really about global trends driving the global digital health sector. And a lot of it is non-specific to science. Most of it is geopolitical elements and economic elements driving people's healthcare. So if we look around, we're not going to go through and around all of these elements here, but so on the right-hand side here, broadening to community-wide resiliency. Here you go, climate change, terrorism, extreme poverty. This is a factor in driving people towards searching for better healthcare. If technology is here in an area with climate change, in an area with terrorism, progress can get slowed. Central, Southern, Northwest Africa, for example, you may think that from a progress perspective, they're behind. They're not. From a mobile perspective, they are way ahead of use of a lot of European countries per head. So how can we take the healthcare systems and AI offerings that you've got in Europe, and how can we best help accelerate the progress in fragile environments in Africa? If you think about shifting demographics, more support for human-centered care, think about things like India, for example, going through a terrible time at the moment with COVID, really showing you that their health infrastructure is based around certain major cities, but as an infrastructure through the country doesn't exist. However, if you look at the 5 to 10 year forecast, not only are they becoming more middle class, therefore can afford more high-end medicines, they're also eating a Western diet, which means that a lot of the family setups, a lot of the average day kind of appetites are changing. Cigarette manufacturers have left this country. Doesn't mean that they've stopped making cigarettes. They've gone to countries that are less socially aware about the impacts of that. Think about fast food restaurants. How do they grow once they've kind of maxed out on consumption in places like the UK and America? Where do they go? So from a pharmaceutical and healthcare perspective, and you're looking at a 3 to 5 to 10 year outlook, you've really got to keep a look at these macro trends that are going on to make sure that you aren't too siloed in the way that you think. Now, a pharmaceutical company, get this stat, makes 80% of its profits from America. Only 20% of its profits come from anywhere else in the world, because everywhere else in the world has got their head screwed on, right? And in America, it's an insurance only, a private insurance only kind of environment. Now, the pharmaceutical companies know that that can't last forever. So they're now starting to diverge themselves around the globe. What better way to do that, and what faster way of doing that than through all of the aspects that digital services can provide you? Data, strategy, technology, telemedicine. And the pandemic really has helped to throw the potential of digital marketing innovation forward by about 5 years, I reckon, by about 5 years. Now, the trouble is with being thrown forward 5 years is that not very many pharma companies are ready to deal with the opportunity, commercial opportunity. And you have to talk like this in pharma, although you're talking about people's health and wellness, it's still, from their point of view, an opportunity to help patients, which ultimately means they make lots of money. It's an opportunity for them to take a good hard look at themselves and use technology to their advantage. So when we look at the future of medicine and you look at the stages down the left-hand side, prepare and prevent. So really along with personalized medicine, so our ability to look at an individual's DNA to be able to design a specific precision-based medicine just for you. So for example, it's not just you going into a pharmacy, taking a packet of paracetamol like everybody else, the same packet. This has just been designed for you. And this is also around making sure that social healthcare is there to stop the cost further down the line. So preparation, for example, preparation and prevent. So everything that you've seen about washing your hands, everything you've seen about lockdown, that is prepare and prevent. Data inputs and diagnostics. So obviously, the more that we know about group herd mentality, the more that we can learn about people's genetic makeup, their behaviors, both at home and in groups, the more that we can start to second guess where and what type of illnesses people may have further down the road. So you're starting to see a lot more research and investigation into molecules that will get ahead of the curve. So they'll be able to look at me and say, Nick, you're 48, you're white, you live in Oxford, you eat all right, you do some running, but I think we now need to look at you and get you prepared for this eventuality. So you can start to see how people are, and by doing that, although that's a little cost up front, the cost of having a heart attack, for example, is exponentially more expensive. You can imagine the number of people that needs to work on that. So if we can stop heart attacks, then we can save money and ultimately save more lives. Therapy and follow-up outcomes and consequences. So you can see through every one of these labels on this grid. Virtual dissection, if you can do anything virtually, then you're saving money, then you're saving administration. How many people aren't actually putting their bodies forward for scientific research, for example? How do we go about getting more donors? Why do we need human donors if we can actually grow those organs that are needed? So this place that I'm sat in today is a great mixture of 200,000 square feet of laboratory space, and all of that really being owned by venture capital science businesses who've come up with an idea that are being invested behind that idea and are pushing it forward, and digital and innovation businesses that are helping to take the scientific idea and grow that scientific idea so that it has traction amongst both the physician population and the consumer patient population as well. So a lot of this stuff, if you look in a newspaper, look online, healthcare is pretty much the most popular topic spoken about. And it's not until you actually start looking at this stuff you'll actually recognize just how much healthcare has been in your lives up till this point. And obviously COVID has now made the globe the most health conscious it has ever been in its life ever. Full stop. So all good news for those of us that work in healthcare digital marketing. Phew. Right. How am I doing, Ryan? I must be there or thereabouts. So we started a business. I've got a family. I've got 3 children. I've got responsibilities. Why on earth in the middle of COVID would I think it's a good idea to start a new business? It's very difficult to get a high street bank to even open a new account for a new business. But, when you have a belief in not only the opportunity, but in your experience, or your idea, or the people that you have around you, none of the decisions you make are easy decisions, but as long as you verbalize those decisions to those around you and you get buy-in and you test the sell, not only to yourself, but you test the sell to those people who are going to be the hardest on you, you pretty much get a great sense that this is a good idea and we should go for it. So belief is my first thing for starting a business, but belief isn't necessarily everything that you need. My next one, pay it forward. So the advantage of experience when you're starting a business and as a salesperson, you are always very good at building bridges, building networks, meeting people, staying in touch, helping people when they ask for help, and offering help for those people that don't ask for help through your career. And that might be by giving somebody their first job. It might be by, some people don't see this, but by firing people out of a job that they're clearly stuck in, and then they'll see you further on in their career, so that was the best thing that ever happened. Or it's as simple, for example, Pivot's first client, the client that is responsible now for giving us our anchor client, I worked with 10 years ago. I helped him do his CV 3 years ago when he was made redundant. And he was redundant for a year, and I got him a couple of job interviews. And, you know, as part of my outreach for Pivot, he remembered that, and he gave us our first opportunity. And this opportunity is now going to be the seed for what we hope will be a massively successful business. So pay it forward. Never, don't look at it for what you're in for right now, because you'll never really know what you're in for right now. But you may want to go back to it in 10 years' time. I wanted to say this one just because I loved this image. This is all around getting a mentor. That I've been around the block a lot, but style, knowledge, ability, they are always things that you're never going to finish learning about these things. And you can get stuck in a rut when you're doing it, when you're working on your own startup. Sometimes it's very difficult to get over yourself, to not be able to break out of the bubble that you're in, to not surround yourself with people that are just going to tell you to get over yourself and give you a quick slap when you need it. So it's important that mentors come in all shapes and sizes. They may be somebody that you've worked with. I've got about 4 mentors. So 2 of them are ex-bosses and 2 of them are friends. And, you know, the ex-bosses look at it from a business perspective. The friends look at it from a family responsibility perspective. You know, those are quite heavy conversations. So get a mentor. Now, this reference will make sense in a second. My absolute favorite television is West Wing. For those of you who've never seen it, it is probably one of the best written television series of all time. I love politics, history and politics. I told you that right at the beginning. And also the fact that the president in it is called President Bartlett. So that's a little bit of an ego thing that I've got here. I just wanted to play you a little clip. Most of my professional career has been based on little clips from West Wing. But now I'm hoping that this is going to work. If not, I think the text comes in at the bottom. Here we go. Hope you can see that.
Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. You know why?
It's the only thing that ever has.
I mean, come on. If that's not enough of a seed for you to want to start your own thing, if you want to change the world, you've got to make the start. And you may have some bumps along the road. And I've run my own businesses before, and then I've gone back into working professionally. Timing wasn't right. Situations weren't right. Friends around me weren't right. But now is the right time. So with that, Ryan, that was it. That was my work. What timing have I got?
Amazing.
25.
Yeah, no, bang on. A couple of minutes left for Q&A. So thank you so much for that, Nick. It was really, really insightful and useful along all sides of what it means to start a business, what advice we can take on board as we start out in the early stages of all of our careers. Lots for me to take away, I think, for House Hack, thinking about how we're starting on that journey too, how we're trying to do that, pay it forward, make those savings, get that network going as well. But with the time in mind, I'm going to dive straight into the team. So Helen, I wonder if you haven't got your mouth full of sandwich, if you had a question for Nick after that.
Yeah, I finished eating my lunch now, so we're good on that front.
Amazing.
I actually don't have a question. I just
wanted to say I found that really fascinating. I actually took a screenshot of the future of medicine slide because it had loads of interesting stuff on there, and I was like, I need to actually do a deeper dive. But yeah, that was really fascinating. I'll be honest, I am not overly invested in healthcare as like well, just an area to focus on, but that was really interesting, genuinely. Thank you for doing that, Nick.
No problem.
Appreciate
And I
it.
think lots of people aren't. Lots of people spend a lot of time kind of not thinking healthcare is for you. But think about healthcare in its broadest sense. So sports, diet, nutrition. Think about anything that your body does or you put into your body. And there's 100 industries that you can go into.
Exactly. And yeah, there were like elements that reminded me of a module I'd done at uni called like it's like digital business in the digital age, and it was talking about like AI and all of that, and it's just fascinating really what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, very interesting talk. No questions. I should probably stop talking so someone can ask a question.
No, no worries, no worries. And I think that's a massive thing that I took away was the kind of macro trend stuff of actually healthcare is something that maybe till you reach a certain age, certain visibility, you realize that you've been engaged with since day one. And it's something that has, from a business sense, a support sense, the matter, the system the country has always been there throughout your life to date and will never kind of go away either. But yeah, Fifi, I wonder if you have any questions for Nick based on that business side, healthcare side.
Oh yeah, thanks, Nick. So I like to think maybe there's some sort of connection, or maybe not some sort of connection between, you know, healthcare or Medicare and business. But I think recently I've been seeing a lot of healthcare professionals really break into that. So would you say, Nick, like there's some sort of barrier, maybe because I heard what Helen said about a lot of people not really having much knowledge about this. Would you say it's because maybe healthcare comes with so much expertise, you know, it having to do with life? So you probably do you need more degrees, or do you need more knowledge, more expertise? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, if you're a designer, if you're a writer, if you're curious, if you've got a personal attachment to a disease or therapy area or a family connection, you will always be able to find a job in the healthcare industry. Healthcare, you know, it's insurance, it's equipment, it's digital, it's don't label it almost as healthcare. Also, don't forget that, you know, we are not trusted to make decisions on the prescriptions we are given. We are an NHS-run business. The government gives the NHS the budget, therefore the NHS decides what drugs we deserve to have. And that's good, but sometimes healthcare hasn't been in the consciousness as much as it has now. So I'd like to think, obviously there's elements of science, but listen, I came from a history and politics degree. I started selling car adverts for a magazine and ended up in healthcare by luck and judgment. So I would say if you look at it, it's a brilliant place. It's a brilliant thing to work. It is completely recession proof. It is pandemic proof. You will always need to take drugs. People will always be ill. It is I like to say a job for life, but it's definitely an industry for life. And from an innovation point of view, at the moment, digital health techs are taking more VC than any other sector. So, you know, there's nothing but opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Amazing. In the last minute or so, Adia, I wonder if you had a question for Nick.
I'm sorry I joined a bit late, but
No problem.
I'm studying law currently, so I'm really interested in how like the advancements in AI influence medical law.
Mm-hmm.
So
my business partner, Toby Goldblatt, who's worked for Avanade. So Avanade was the Microsoft Accenture AI business. And he is somebody who has written a number of papers on the ethics of healthcare artificial intelligence. So if you want to, I would not ask me about that necessarily, but he is definitely the dude that I can connect you up with. It is something that the healthcare are wrestling with. Data, generally privacy, is a huge factor through Europe. And again, as the world becomes more global, as healthcare becomes more global, and our ability to get blood samples checked and looked at in other countries in 24 hours, you know, things like transportation of my personal DNA across a border that has two different rules to do with my privacy, for example. How do the pharmaceutical companies overcome that? Law, if you want to get a job for life and the people that will bite your hand off, come and work in healthcare. My God, there's lots of lawyers in healthcare, but what we need is young, digital native lawyers who understand social media and won't get in my way when I want to do some nice stuff.
Yeah, I think that's important, but no one really takes you unless you have experience in medicine. So that's also very difficult.
Well, I tell you what, we'll hook up afterwards and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Nice, amazing. I'm going to stop the recording.